Thinking of exiting your business or taking on a private equity partner to help you grow faster? BizNexus has you covered. Tap into our network of thousands of best-fit investors, acquirers, and proven M&A advisors, and we'll help you begin the relationship confidentially on your terms, your timeline. Learn more at biznexus.com.
Disclaimer from the always present legal team. Podcast conversations don't necessarily reflect the views of BizNexus Incorporated. Everything you hear is informational news and updates from around the industry. We're not recommending any investments. We're not offering any investment advice. Be sure to do your own homework.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the deep dive. You guys wanted a breakdown of the current business buying market, so we're going to go deep on that today. And specifically, we're looking at, a lot of you wanted to hear about the lower middle market, so that's kind of the focus.
Huh?
We're going to be looking at this Forbes article by Richard Parker. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, he's bought 14 businesses himself, so.
Yeah, he's kind of a big name in this world. And the title of this article really got me. It's called Individual Business Buyers Are Flooding the Market. I thought, well, gosh, if everybody's jumping in, is that going to make it even harder to find a good business?
Right. It's definitely a crowded space, that's for sure. But Parker makes some interesting points about why it's not as simple as just looking at supply and demand. You know, for example, remember all that talk about the baby boomers selling off their businesses?
Oh, yeah.
The silver tsunami?
Right.
Well, that hasn't quite panned out.
Yeah, I remember that prediction. So what's going on there? Are boomers just like stubbornly holding on to their businesses?
It seems so. A lot of them are staying put longer than expected. Now, Parker doesn't really get into the reasons why, but it's definitely bucking the trend, we'll say. And what this means is that even with more buyers out there, prices aren't necessarily skyrocketing the way you might think they would.
Interesting. So it throws a wrench into that whole buy low, sell high kind of,
Yeah.
But more buyers,
Right.
relatively stable prices. I mean, that sounds almost too good to be true, right? And Parker actually, he really goes after some of the hype that's out there, particularly on social media. I mean, I see it all the time.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back about these gurus, these so-called gurus who promise that you can buy businesses with no money down or run them completely absentee, and he argues that if a business is really healthy and the seller's motivated, they don't need those kinds of tactics.
Right. So that's a huge red flag, right? For anyone who's, especially I think in the lower middle market, where you might think, oh, well, maybe I can find a deal like that.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's not necessarily.
Yeah, I would definitely proceed with caution. And speaking of things that might sound too good to be true, Parker also, he takes aim at these self-proclaimed searchers who flooded the market. He's a little skeptical, I think, about their expertise.
Yeah. He practically rolls his eyes at them in the article. I love it.
Yeah.
Can you unpack what he means by that a little bit?
Sure. So the term searcher is actually borrowed from a legitimate investment model called a search fund, and it was pioneered at Stanford. Basically involves individuals raising significant capital to specifically find and acquire a business, often with the goal of running it themselves.
Okay, so there's a real structure behind it.
Exactly. Parker's point is that a lot of people have latched onto that searcher label without the actual funding or experience to back it up. It's like, calling yourself a chef because you own a cookbook, not because you've actually run a restaurant.
Right. Gotcha. So it sounds like there's a lot of noise to cut through in this market, especially in the lower middle market. We've got hype, questionable tactics, people maybe overselling their expertise. What does Parker say someone should be doing if they're actually serious about buying a business?
Well, he's really clear about this. He says, get your financial ducks in a row before you even start looking. So that means understanding how much you can truly invest. And not just the purchase price, but working capital, potential upgrades, and your own living expenses during that transition.
Right. Makes sense. It's like, don't go house hunting without a mortgage pre-approval, right?
Exactly. And Parker also strongly recommends getting pre-approved for an SBA loan.
Okay, and can you maybe just quickly explain what that is for folks who aren't familiar?
Sure, yeah. An SBA loan is a government-backed loan that's specifically designed to help small businesses get funding. It often comes with better terms than conventional loans, which makes it really appealing for acquisitions in the lower middle market. So getting pre-approved basically shows sellers that you're serious and that you're capable of actually closing the deal.
Gotcha. So it's a credibility booster.
Exactly. Now, even with financing in place, you still have to find the right business, right? And Parker doesn't sugarcoat the challenges there either. He says securing funding in the lower middle market, it can be tough. And he also points out the prevalence of seller financing in this space, which can be a good option, but it also adds another layer of complexity.
Okay. So what's his advice on navigating that whole funding hurdle?
Well, he says knowledge is power, basically. He suggests, researching different funding options, understanding the terms, and being prepared to present a compelling case to lenders or potential sellers who are offering financing. And he stresses that it's not just about the numbers, it's about showing that you understand the business, its market, and your vision for its future. Lenders and sellers, they want to see that you've done your homework.
Yeah. So you're not just a dreamer, you're like a savvy business person, even if this is your first acquisition.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've got, this influx of buyers, stubborn boomers. We've got the funding hurdles. We've got all this hype to sift through. It sounds like it's a pretty complex landscape. It sounds like Parker's advocating for a much more strategic approach than what you might see in a get-rich-quick seminar.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of strategy, Parker actually outlines a very specific process for buying a business. He breaks it down into 23 steps.
23 steps. Okay, that sounds a little intimidating. But he also emphasizes that, anyone can learn this process with the right resources and guidance.
Right. And that's kind of what we're doing here today, right? We're taking those complex steps and breaking them down into manageable chunks.
Awesome. So where do we even begin with this 23-step roadmap?
Well, the first and arguably the most crucial step, especially in the lower middle market, is defining your goals and criteria.
Okay, let's dive into that.
So before you just dive headfirst into business listings, Parker says you really got to get crystal clear on what you actually want. He calls this defining your goals and criteria, and it's especially critical in the lower middle market because, businesses can be so diverse in that space.
So it's not just, I want to own a business, it's, I want to own this kind of business.
Exactly. What industry are you interested in? What size business are you looking for? Do you want a business with a proven track record, or are you more interested in a turnaround opportunity? How involved do you want to be in the day-to-day operations?
Right. It's like figuring out your must-haves versus your deal breakers. Do you want to be hands-on, or are you kind of looking for more of a passive investment?
Exactly. And just like with real estate, location matters. Are you willing to relocate, or are you looking for something in a specific geographic area? These are all things to really think about up front.
Yeah. And of course, we can't forget about the financial piece, right? We talked about getting pre-approved for financing, but you also have to figure out how much you can realistically invest overall.
Absolutely. It's not just the purchase price, it's working capital, any potential renovations or upgrades, and of course your own living expenses while you transition into the business.
Right. So step one, define your goals, set your criteria, know your financial limits. Makes sense. So what's next on Parker's 23-step roadmap?
All right, so once you have a clear picture of what you're looking for, it's time to start actually searching for businesses that fit the bill. And this is where Parker really emphasizes the importance of networking, especially in the lower middle market.
Okay, so spread the word, tell everyone you know you're on the hunt for a business, tap into the power of word of mouth.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to reach out to your personal and professional networks. You never know who might have a lead on a business that's not even listed publicly.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Now, what about business brokers? I know they specialize in connecting buyers and sellers, but they also work for the seller, right?
Yeah, that's an important point. Business brokers typically represent the seller, and they receive a commission based on the sale price.
Okay, so while they can be a valuable resource, it's important to remember that they're not necessarily acting in your best interest.
Right, but they can still provide valuable insights into the market.
Yeah.
And they can help facilitate the transaction. And like I said, they often have access to businesses that aren't publicly listed.
Gotcha. So use them strategically, understand their role, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Okay.
Now, let's say you found a business that seems promising. It ticks all your boxes, you're excited about the potential. What's the next crucial step?
Due diligence. This is where you really dig deep into the financials, the legal documents, customer contracts, and everything else that's going to give you a comprehensive understanding of the business.
Due diligence. Sounds a little intimidating, but it's basically like giving the business a thorough checkup, right? Making sure there are no hidden surprises.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, you're looking for any red flags, any potential issues that could impact the business's future profitability. This might include reviewing financial statements, tax returns, customer data, employee records, even supplier agreements, and any outstanding legal matters.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. It sounds like having a good team of advisors is essential during this stage.
Absolutely. You'll want a lawyer to review contracts and legal documents, an accountant to analyze the financials, maybe even a business consultant to kind of provide a more holistic assessment of the business's operations.
Okay, so due diligence is all about getting that clear and unbiased picture of the business, warts and all. What happens after you've completed this deep dive into the company's inner workings?
Well, if everything checks out and you're still excited about the opportunity, it's time to make an offer. And this is where you'll put forth your proposed purchase price and terms, including any contingencies or conditions you might have.
Okay, so the offer is where the negotiation really begins. It's that delicate dance between buyer and seller, trying to find that mutually agreeable price.
Exactly. Both parties want to feel like they're getting a fair deal. And having a strong understanding of the market and comparable businesses is critical here because it gives you leverage during the negotiations.
Right, so you've got your research, your due diligence findings, your financing pre-approval. You make your offer, hopefully the seller accepts. What happens next?
Congratulations. If your offer is accepted, you're one step closer to becoming a business owner. But the process isn't over just yet. The next critical step is finalizing the purchase agreement.
Ah, yes, the legal paperwork. Not always the most exciting part, but essential.
It is. The purchase agreement is a legally binding document that outlines all the terms of the sale, including the purchase price, payment method, closing date, and any contingencies or warranties.
Okay, so it's like the rule book for the entire transaction.
Precisely. And you'll definitely want your lawyer to review the purchase agreement carefully to make sure you understand all the terms before signing.
Right, of course. So you've done your research, completed due diligence, negotiated an offer, and finalized the purchase agreement. Is it finally time to pop the champagne?
Almost. There's one final step. The closing. This is where the ownership of the business is officially transferred to you.
So this is where the keys change hands.
You could say that. Yeah, it typically involves a mountain of paperwork, finalizing the payment, and taking possession of the business assets.
Okay, so it's a lot of steps, but it's helpful to hear it broken down like that. It makes the process feel a little less daunting, even if it's still complex.
Yeah.
But there's more to buying a business than just the legal and financial side, isn't there?
You're absolutely right. Buying a business isn't just a transaction, it's a transition.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you're not just buying a set of assets, you're inheriting a living, breathing entity with employees, customers, suppliers, a whole ecosystem built around it.
Right. You're stepping into an existing company culture with established relationships and dynamics.
Exactly. And that's why the post-acquisition phase is so critical, especially in the lower middle market where relationships are often even more tightly knit.
So it's not just about signing on the dotted line. It's about what happens after the ink dries.
Exactly.
Building trust with the team, understanding the nuances of the business, ensuring a smooth transition for everyone involved.
Precisely. It's about integration, not just acquisition.
Right. So even after you become the owner, there's still a lot to learn and navigate. It sounds like the journey really just begins at closing.
That's the beauty of entrepreneurship. It's a continuous journey of learning, adaptation, and growth.
Okay, so we've talked about the legal stuff, the financial stuff, but there's got to be more to it, right? Like, you're not just buying a building and some inventory. You're buying a whole business, right?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most critical steps Parker emphasizes, and this is really important in the lower middle market, is understanding the seller's motivation. Like, why are they selling? Are they retiring? Moving on to a new venture? Facing health issues? Whatever the reason is, it can really impact the negotiation process and even the transition after you acquire the business.
That's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, a motivated seller, let's say due to health reasons, might be more willing to negotiate on price. But if they're selling because they're ready for a new challenge, they might be more focused on finding a buyer who will kind of continue their legacy, even if it means a slightly lower offer.
Makes sense. So it's not just about the numbers, it's about understanding the human element too.
Right. And Parker also talks about the importance of valuing intangible assets, especially in the lower middle market. So this means looking beyond just the financials and considering things like customer relationships, brand reputation, employee loyalty, all that good stuff.
Yeah, those are huge.
They are. And you can't always quantify those things on a balance sheet, but they're often what sets a business apart from its competitors.
Totally. It's like, what's the vibe?
Exactly. And Parker encourages potential buyers to think about their own unique skills and experience. What can you bring to the table? What specific expertise or perspective can you leverage to make this business even more successful? It's about finding a business that aligns not only with your interests, but also with your strengths.
So it's not just about what the business offers you. It's about what you can offer the business.
Exactly. It's a two-way street. And finally, Parker reminds us that buying a business is not a solo mission. Build a team of trusted advisors, lawyers, accountants, mentors, maybe even other business owners, people who can offer guidance and support throughout the entire process.
Surround yourself with good people. Never hurts to ask for help.
Absolutely. It's a complex journey, and having the right people in your corner can make a world of difference.
Well, this has been super insightful. It's clear that buying a business, especially in the lower middle market, it's not for the faint of heart. It takes dedication, resilience, and a willingness to learn and adapt.
It does, but it can also be incredibly rewarding. There's something really empowering about building something of your own, creating jobs, serving your community, and leaving your mark on the world.
That entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Yeah.
Taking a risk, putting in the work, and reaping the rewards.
Exactly. And Parker's journey, buying 14 businesses without even having a college degree, that's a testament to that. It proves that success isn't about fancy credentials. It's about hard work, determination, and that willingness to learn and grow.
Love that. And I think what I appreciate most about his advice is that it's real. He doesn't sugarcoat the challenges, but he also doesn't shy away from the potential.
Right. He encourages us to be informed, strategic, and most importantly, to believe in ourselves.
So for our listeners out there dreaming of owning their own business, what's the one key takeaway you think they should hold on to?
Well, I think Parker's final words in the article say it best. Do not think of yourself as a searcher. You are a finder. Go out there and find the business that's waiting for you.
Awesome. So don't wait for the perfect opportunity. Be proactive, be resourceful, be a finder, and make it happen. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Acquiring a business? BizNexus simplifies it. Access thousands of updated opportunities in our DIY marketplace or supercharge team sourcing with OmniSource, your all-in-one platform for on-market, off-market, and coming-soon deals. Scale smarter today. Learn more or book a demo at www.biznexus.com.